You're just stuck with me this week. This is Beer in Front. Every week I'll talk about a beer that maybe we've forgotten along the way while we get those check-ins and badges. Being the Chicago beer guy, I'll also talk about great craft beer in the city of Chicago. That's Beer in Front, and it's coming up now. Welcome to episode 117 of Beer in Front. I thank you so much for listening. As I mentioned in the intro, this week is a solo show, no interviews, anything like that. So it's just going to be me talking some beer. And for my longtime listeners of the show, there is a return, a 1-week special return of the Jag-Off of the Week. So stay tuned for that. I want to give a big shout out and thank you to the folks over at the X Radio X podcast and also Haley from Podcast 27. There was a shooting in Highland Park, Illinois on July 4th, as I'm sure everyone has heard. And both of them, they're not from the area, but they both reached out to me, making sure that my family, that I was safe. So thank you. I appreciate it. Please check out X Radio X and Podcast 27. I want to thank you all. This week, I sat down and talked to Rob from the Internet Talks Beer, and we talked about beer from Canada. I had a Labatt's Blue as we were having our conversation, so look for that episode to drop in a couple of weeks. Now, that doesn't mean you could just stop listening to this show and wait until you hear from Rob. No, this is a good show. I had as the Beer in Front Champagne Velvet. That was put out by Upland. I'm going to talk about that. I have some good local beers here. And also, I'm going to talk about the Wish You Were Beer Show collaboration with the Virginia Beer Company on their beer, which I'm excited to try. I've not had it yet, but I will talk about it later in the show. They're Dortmunder. I hardly know her. So, good show coming up. Stay tuned and let's kick it off. In beer news this week, Reebok and Harpoon, they've come out with the new beer and line of gym shoes. I guess they're running shoes. The beer is called Rec League, and this is a low alcohol, low calorie, hoppy pale ale, and the gym shoe is done in the colors of Harpoon. It looks really sharp, but what's the sharpest of all is the 6-pack container of this looks like a box of shoes, like a box of Reebok shoes. So it's really cool. I don't know if it's going to be distributed nationwide or just in the Boston area. But if you go to harpoonbrewery.com, you could enter for a chance to win the shoes. I'm not sure if you could get the beer if they ship the beer, but check out harpoonbrewery.com. This does look pretty cool. If you're a fan of Pabst Blue Ribbon, you could buy an 1844 pack. That's right. You get 1,844 cans of PBR. Now, you could find it at a good price of $849. So look for the 1844 pack of PBR. The people at BrewDog, especially James Watts, in my opinion, they just don't seem like very nice people. You could read up on them if you want, whatever. But now James Watt is he's claiming now he has autism or he's on the spectrum and wants to get checked out for that, I guess, as an excuse for being a jag-off. So do with it what you will. I don't drink BrewDog. I don't think they're nice people, but this just seems kind of shady to me. I have listeners in Singapore. If you listen to this in Singapore, you need to get a hold of me. We need to have a conversation. There's a brewery in Singapore. They're called Brewworks, Brewerkz, and they have a beer that is a blonde ale, and it's made with recycled toilet water. And from the article that I'm reading on Yahoo, one person said, I seriously couldn't tell that this was made of toilet water. If you're a listener in Singapore and you've had this, get a hold of me, but you could get some toilet water beer. Speaking of beers made with strange water, there's a brewery that's in Fort Worth, Texas, and they're called Martin House Brewing, and they're making a hard seltzer. The hard seltzer is made with the leftover water from boiling 52 pounds of hot dogs. So you could have, cue up your own Limp Biscuit jokes here, but you could have a hot dog flavored water hard seltzer thanks to the fine people over at Martin House Brewing in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm going to take a pass on that one. And finally, speaking of seltzers, New Holland Brewing out of Holland, Michigan. Now, they're coming out with the new seltzer that's barrel-aged. This is called Dragon's Share, and they have like an orange barrel-aged one, a regular, I think they have a cherry one as well. It's only 4% alcohol. I don't know. It's not distributed in Chicago. It's in the suburbs, far suburbs. I wrote to them to see if this is coming around. I'd be interested to try it, but I don't know. I just think that's just going a little overboard with the seltzer craze that we're now barrel aging plain water and turning it into seltzer. Oh, I had some really good beers this week. The first one that I had a cider from Ace, their pineapple cider. When I was on that cider cruise last month, the representative from Ace said that is by far their biggest seller. That's their hazy IPA for them. That's the one that pays the rent. I remember having this years and years ago. I had it again. It was still very good, although it seemed a little sweet. Maybe it's just been a long time since I had it, but the pineapple cider from Ace was still very good. Friend of the show, Tammy, sent me from Missouri when she was there. She brought a Critter Creek IPA. This is from Longboat Brewing Company. This was very good. It had a nice pineapple citrus taste to it, old school West Coast IPA. So if you're in Missouri and you see Critter Creek IPA from Longboat, I would definitely pick that one up. Thank you, Tammy. Another friend of the show, Sarah, brought over from Haymarket in Chicago. Their hazy is lazy. This is another old school IPA. This one I thought was really good. I love everything that Haymarket puts out. So if you see in the Chicago area, hazy is lazy from Haymarket, I would definitely pick that one up. Thank you, Sarah. The final beer tonight is from the Virginia Beer Company. This is Dortmunder I Hardly Know Her. This beer is in collaboration with my friends over at Wish You Were Beer Show, and this was terrific. I had this on their show. I'm recording this Thursday night. I was just on their show a couple hours ago, cracked it open and had it there. This was delicious. It had a nice bready, kind of crackery taste to it. I had a little, almost like an Oktoberfest feel at the end. It was very faint for me, but I noticed it. This was excellent. So if you're in the Virginia area, grab anything from the Virginia Beer Company. But if you see Dortmunder, I Hardly Know Her, I would pick it up. And also listen to Wish You Were Beer. They put out a live show every Thursday night over on YouTube, so be sure to check that out. I want to thank them for sending this my way. Dortmunder, I Hardly Know Her is excellent. The beer in front of me this week is Champagne Velvet. This is a Pilsner, and it's the beer with the $1 million flavor. This is brewed currently by Upland Brewing Company in Indiana. This beer has a storied history, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but let's crack it open. Champagne Velvet looks like champagne. It has a really nice gold color to it, wonderful carbonation. I get everything in the aroma is faint. I'm getting some faint malt, faint hops here, but it smells very nice. That's a decent beer. Yeah, I find nothing wrong with this. I mean, for a macro, for a cheap lager, I think this is very good. And I wouldn't call this a macro since it's made by Upland, but the price point was really good. I picked this up at my Binny's, a local chain liquor store here in Illinois, and I think I grabbed it for $9.99 a 12-pack. So the price point on this was very good. Yeah, the taste is good. I get a little bit of hops. I get a little sweetness. They use corn in this. I get some of that. I think for a light, cheap lager that you're going to drink, you could do a lot worse than Champagne Velvet. Champagne Velvet originally started in 1902 when Walter Brunn, he created a recipe for this new Pilsner. For 50 years, it was big in Indiana. They say it has the $1 million flavor, and legend has it that the recipe was insured for $1 million, so that's why they called it that. Prohibition hurt the company. It came back, and it was still a regional favorite, and different ownership groups, different packaging. They turned it into a malt liquor in the 70s and tried to compete with cheaper malt liquors, and eventually the copyright just expired, and a gentleman in Indiana purchased the copyright for $20 and tried to brew it, but Upland wanted to make a beer for their anniversary. The gentleman who had this gave the info over to Upland, and they wanted to do something for their anniversary, so they tweaked the recipe a little bit. The recipe was old, written down on a piece of paper, and this is really good. It's 5.5% alcohol, 29 IBUs. The can looks like something you would see definitely in the 50s. It has that old school look to it, font. It's a really solid beer. Like I said, it has a good price point at $10 for a 12-pack. So if you see Champagne Velvet, pick it up. It's been a while, but here is your Jagoff of the Week. As I'm sure you've all heard, on July 4th, there was a shooting at the parade in Highland Park, Illinois, which is a far suburb of Chicago. There's a candidate for governor, Darren Bailey. He's a former Jagoff of the Week for other reasons. Now, he released a campaign video on Facebook. They didn't even find the shooter yet. So they're still looking for this guy that shot up the parade and killed 7 people, injured others. But he released a campaign video saying, "Now, let's move on and celebrate the independence of this nation." Darren Bailey, you are a fucking jagoff. Oh, I want to thank you for listening to this week's episode of Beer in Front. If you need to get a hold of me, you could email me, dave@beerinfront.com. I have a Patreon page, patreon.com/beerinfront. There are other ways to support the show if you'd like. You could follow me on Twitter and Instagram @beerinfront. All right, I hope everyone has a great week, and I will see you next Thursday.